The notebook lay open to the right of my keyboard. The price I wanted to buy it had already been circled, slightly below the number showing on the market screen. I looked back and forth between the two. There was still some distance between them, so I moved the market window to one corner and went back to work. There was no reason to rush. If the stock returned to the range I had planned, I would consider buying. If it kept rising, I could wait for another opportunity. Spreadsheets and work emails gradually filled the screen in front of me. My phone sat quietly beside my coffee, and the notebook remained open to the same page. At times, I almost forgot where the stock was trading. It was only when I needed to switch to another window that the market screen appeared again in the background, and the green number made my hand pause on the mouse. The price was higher than the last time I had checked. I opened the chart, compared it with the range I had marked, then looked back at the notebook. The price I wanted was still there on the page. There was no new report, no new information from the company, nothing that should have changed the plan I had made earlier. I closed the chart, and the work spreadsheets returned to the center of the screen. After sending an email, I reached for my coffee and pulled up the market screen again. The stock was still green. The gain was not large, but it was enough to make me calculate how different my account would look if I had bought at the open. The number was insignificant. I knew that as soon as I finished the calculation, that my eyes stayed on the price for a little longer before I returned to the documents in front of me. Work continued as usual. The only thing that changed was how long I could forget about the stock. While reading an email, I switched to the market screen. After typing a few lines into a spreadsheet, my eyes went back to the number in the corner. Sometimes I did not even need to open the chart anymore. Just seeing that the number was still green was enough to know that the stock had not returned to the price I was waiting for. Each check lasted only a few seconds. Voices began to fill the hallway as people called one another to lunch. When I looked back on the morning, I could no longer remember how many times I had checked the stock since sitting down at my desk. I locked my computer and took my phone with me. I had barely started eating when the market screen appeared in my hand again. The stock had moved a little higher. I put the phone down, took a few more bites, and listened to the people around the table. But before long, my finger touched the screen again. The price still had not come back down. I remembered where it had been at the beginning of the session and calculated once more. If I had bought then, the difference by now would have been a little larger. It still was not enough money to change anything, but the calculation felt different this time. In the morning, I had only wanted to know where the price was. Now, I was beginning to calculate the profit I did not have. Someone sitting beside me asked about work. I turned off the screen, answered a few questions, and continued eating. Voices, chairs moving across the floor, and spoons tapping against lunch boxes blended together as they did every day. My phone lay quietly beside me, but every now and then, my eyes still moved toward it, even though the screen was dark. Back at my desk, I reopened the documents I had left unfinished. This time, I did not open the market screen right away. I wanted to finish part of my work first, but as soon as the cursor reached the end of a line, the stock entered my thoughts again, just one more look. If the price was still high, I would keep waiting. The stock was not only still high, it had moved up again. I pulled the notebook closer. Everything that had made me interested in the company was still there. The business itself, the numbers I had studied, the price range I had calculated, and the level above which I did not want to chase the stock. Nothing written on the page had changed. I put the notebook down, but this time, the market screen stayed open. An order window appeared beside it. I entered a number of shares and looked at the total amount below. If I bought here, I would be paying more than I had planned. The numbers sat there for a few seconds. Then I deleted the quantity, closed the order window, and returned to work. There was still plenty of time left in the afternoon session. I could still wait. But after opening that order window for the first time, not buying became harder than it had been before. I stood up to get some more water. When I returned, the price was still around the same level. I had barely put my glass down when the bid moved up another step. I expanded the chart, looked at the recent sessions, and tried to decide whether the current price was really too high. The distance from my original target was still there, but when I looked at it on a longer chart, that distance suddenly seemed smaller. Nothing I had written in the notebook was wrong. A different way of calculating had simply begun to. If this was still the same company I had considered a good investment, and if buyers were pushing the price higher, were a few price steps really worth missing an opportunity over? That question had not been on the page that morning. My phone lit up with a new notification. The stock I had been watching was being discussed in a group I often read. One person said money was flowing into it quite strongly. Someone else said the price had just broken above an important level. Another account, which had bought earlier, posted a screenshot showing the profit in its portfolio. I read all the new messages and put the phone down. No one in the group knew more than what I had already learned about the company. Their comments did not change its financial statements either. But when I looked back at the screen and saw the stock continuing to rise, the price I had rejected only a short while earlier suddenly became easier to accept. I began calculating in the opposite direction. It was no longer about how much higher the price was than my plan. Instead, I calculated what would happen if the stock rose another few percent. Would the current difference still matter then? If I waited for a pullback and the price never returned, I might have to buy even high. And if I continued standing on the sidelines, a stock I had followed for a long time might seem to keep moving away from me. I opened the order window again. This time, I entered the number of shares more quickly. My buy price sat close to the asking price. My hand remained on the mouse for a few seconds. There was still time left in the session. Nothing was forcing me to make a decision at that moment. A new buy order appeared on the market screen. The price moved up another step. I clicked confirm. The order notification appeared almost immediately. Part of the order was filled, while the rest remained pending. I watched the available shares on the sell side decrease, then raised my price by another step. When the confirmation button appeared again, the time between seeing it and clicking it was much shorter than before. My phone rang. I stepped outside, finished the call, then returned to my desk and opened my portfolio. The rest of the order had been filled while I was away. The stock now sat fully in my account at an average cost higher than the number written on the page beside me. I looked at the two numbers for a while, then leaned back in my chair. The first thing I felt was not happiness because I had finally bought a stock I liked. It was not even satisfaction from having made an investment decision. It was simply relief. The feeling of having to watch the stock rise while owning none of it disappear almost immediately. Now, if the price kept rising, I was in. I put the phone down, minimized the portfolio window, and returned to the spreadsheet in front of me without needing to know what the next price movement would be. I finished the work I had left undone and stood up to get more water. When I returned, I placed the glass beside the notebook and opened my portfolio almost out of habit. The stock I had just bought was slightly above my average cost. The difference was tiny, but that small patch of green was enough to make the decision I had made a short while earlier seem more reasonable. I pushed the notebook aside to make more room on the desk. The price I had written before the session was still there, but I was no longer paying much attention to the gap between my plan and the price I had actually paid. The stock was rising. If it continued higher, those few price steps would eventually stop mattering. A colleague came over to discuss some work. We stood beside the screen, hawking through the numbers in a spreadsheet. Then he took the document and left. When I sat down and returned my hand to the mouse, the green number in my portfolio had faded. More shares were appearing on the sell side. The price had just moved down one step. The small profit in my portfolio shrank with. I opened the chart, looked at the recent trades, then went back to work. A small intraday pullback was nothing unusual. The price moved down again. The green beside the stock disappeared. The current price approached my average cost, then slipped slightly below it. The work in front of me was still there, but at some point the cursor on the screen had stopped moving. I looked at the market screen, waiting for a large enough buy order to appear and push the stock back up. The price recovered one step, my hand returned to the spreadsheet, and I continued working. I completed one row of data, then another. When I reached for my glass, my eyes passed over the market screen in the corner. The stock had moved down again. Only then did I look at the notebook beside me. My original target price was still there, lower than the price I had just paid. While the stock had been rising, the distance between those two numbers had seemed too small to matter. Now that the price had begun to fall, that same distance suddenly looked much clearer. I expanded the chart. The price range I had originally planned to wait for was below. From morning until nearly lunchtime, I had wanted the stock to return there so I could buy according to my plan. But now that the price was finally moving in the direction I had been waiting for all along, what I wanted was for it not to fall any further. A large buy order appeared. The price moved up. My hand relaxed on the mouse. No new report had appeared. The company in front of me was still the same company. That a single upward move had been enough to make my hand relax, just as a downward move moments earlier had made the cursor on my screen stop. My phone vibrated with a work message. I replied and put it down. I was about to return to the spreadsheet, but my eyes went to the market screen first. The stock was standing still. I continued working, but the market window remained open in one corner of the screen. Outside the building's glass windows, the sun had dropped lower behind the distant rooftops. The light across my desk gradually faded, stretching the shadows of the glass and notebook toward the keyboard. Only when the numbers on the market screen stopped changing did I close the window, save the documents that were still open, and begin packing up. I closed the notebook and put it into my bag with the laptop. Standing in front of the elevator, I took out my phone almost out of habit. My portfolio appeared with the closing price of the stock I had just bought. The number was no longer moving, yet I kept looking at it for a few more seconds, as though the trading session had only paused and another price change might appear at any moment. The elevator doors opened. I turned off the screen and stepped inside. Outside the building, heat still rose from the road after a full day of sun. Traffic had begun to thicken, with horns and engines blending together along the street ahead. My phone was in my pocket, but two prices remained very clear in my mind. The number I had written down before the session, and the number that had actually appeared in my trade history. By the time I reached home, the sun had disappeared. Through the window, only the lights from the buildings across the street and the long streams of traffic below remained. I put my bag down, placed the laptop on the desk, and went to wash my face. Running water, familiar sounds around the house, and the ordinary things that needed doing pulled my attention elsewhere. The laptop remained closed on the desk. The sounds around the house gradually grew quieter. Across the window, more lights had appeared in the buildings opposite. I returned to the desk, pulled out the chair, and opened the laptop. This time, I did not open the markets. I took the notebook from my bag and turned to the exact page I had written on before the session. My trade history appeared on the screen. The price I had paid was on one side. On the page, the price I had originally wanted to buy it was still there. I pulled the notebook closer to the laptop until both numbers were within the same field of view. The distance between them was not large enough to determine whether this investment would ultimately succeed or fail. Tomorrow, the stock might rise again. It might also continue to fall. But none of that had happened yet. What I had in front of me was simply one price written down when the market screen had not been pushing me to hurry, and another price I had accepted after spending hours watching the stock rise. I flipped back through a few pages. Earlier plans also contained price ranges, assumptions, and notes written with the same pen. On those pages, I always seemed to have enough time to think. If new information appeared, an assumption could be changed. If the price was no longer suitable, an opportunity could be allowed to pass. There were no numbers flashing every second on the page, pushing me to decide immediately. I returned to the open page and placed the tip of my pen beside the original price. All I had to do was change that number to something closer to the price I had actually paid, and the plan and the tray would immediately look more consistent with each other. The pen remained on the page for a moment. Then I lifted it. The original number stayed exactly where it was. In the empty space beside it, I wrote one more line. Bought above my planned price. I did not add an explanation. I did not write whether the decision had been right or wrong. The next trading session had not even begun, so the outcome of the investment did not yet exist. On the page, there was only the price I had chosen before I owned the stock, and the price I had accepted after spending hours watching it rise. I closed the laptop. The blue light across the desk disappeared, leaving only the overhead lamp shining down on the open notebook. Outside the window, streams of traffic continued beneath the city lights. The sounds from the street drifted upward, then faded behind the glass. The line I had just written was still there beneath my fingertips. I looked at it for a little longer. Then I closed the notebook.